Coming up, Kirby Smart's got to replace an assistant coach, and at least one recruit may not be too happy about it. And Nick Saban's the subject of a hot take from his boss. We'll tell you about it all next, right here on SEC Country Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. No doubt you had a good time in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. Another national championship trophy handed out to the folks there over the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, definitely had a good vibe to it, obviously, in Tuscaloosa, and was there over the weekend. And the weather was great. There was more people than I've ever seen show up for a championship parade, and obviously the trophies were on hand. You're right.
You and Hannah Chalker, our good friend, did a great job on the coverage of SEC Country over the weekend. We'll talk more about that and everything else with our First and 10 here coming up today on SEC Country Live. But from time to time, we're in a position to do this. We're going to start the show with some late-breaking news. We'll do that here as it involves the Georgia Bulldogs, as we find out within the last hour that Shane Beamer, the Georgia tight end special team coach, the son of, obviously, Frank Beamer, the former legendary coach at Virginia Tech, Beamer apparently leaving the University of Georgia here, where he's been employed since Kirby Smart took the job in 2016. Here's the tweet, first of all, from Chris Lowe, ESPN.com, who I believe was the first to break the story. Shane Beamer leaving Georgia to become assistant coach for the offense at Oklahoma, be involved with Lincoln Riley in preparing the Sooners' weekly offensive game plan. Sources tell ESPN. So what I take that tweet to mean here is that maybe it's a little bit of an additional responsibility for Beamer, that he'll be, not just a tight end as a special team guy, but the kind of guy who can really consider himself part of the offensive game plan in a way that he wasn't really at Georgia.
Yeah, and incidentally, I think the biggest thing he leaves behind at Georgia is actually that special teams void. I think when you look at what Georgia really did in their special teams, specifically their kickoff coverage or their kickoff return coverage, I thought he really sent Georgia to another level. I mean, they climbed a ton of spots under his watch. So essentially, that's what he'll be leaving behind at Georgia when you talk about him taking off to Oklahoma. Now, I think that gives you a peek into what he eventually wants to be. It looks like he eventually would love to be an offensive coordinator, go on to be a head coach at some point in his career. But I think the biggest thing he leaves behind is the void as a special teams coordinator and coach for Georgia right now. The good thing is for Kirby Smart and staff that they have that 10th assistant this year to kind of go to.
Yeah, so Georgia's still waiting to hire its 10th assistant in terms of Georgia filling the special teams role that Beamer filled. Ironically, Scott Fountain, who had been an analyst for Georgia this past season, took the special teams job at Mississippi State. So it would seem that he's out of the mix for that. So it kind of remains to be seen where Georgia goes on this. There's also the flip side of the coin in terms of coaches leaving after especially the early signing period in December, maybe some dissatisfaction on the part of recruits. The tight end recruit, the elite tight end that Georgia signed for its 2018 class was Luke Ford, the #1 player in the state of Illinois. Ford at one point in time been an Arkansas commit, decommitted from the Razorbacks, considered Georgia along with Illinois, Alabama, a host of others. He was active on Twitter this afternoon reacting to the Shane Beamer decision. His initial tweet was, "Wow," about Beamer leaving. A person responded back to him, "Someone got lied to." Then Luke Ford actually retweeted that response from Christopher Fields. Since then, Ford has deleted that. The "wow" tweet from Ford is still up, but deleting the tweet where he seems to give some credence to the idea that he felt lied to, felt bothered. We obviously can't be inside Ford's head. We don't necessarily know what he feels by this, but the Twitter activity certainly gives you some sense that maybe he felt bothered by the news, finding out maybe on social media like the rest of us that Beamer was leaving Georgia for the job at Oklahoma.
I think it's tough, too, because, this is the point in time where these guys are signed on. These guys have signed on the dotted line, and you're not going to see an end to this anytime soon, by the way. This is going to happen a lot in the next few weeks where these coaches start leaving, and the recruits that have already signed on the dotted line are left kind of holding their hands up in there going, what just happened? I mean, can you imagine, if some of the recruits that Tennessee's trying to get right now for Bama, like J.J. Peterson, Quay Walker, all these guys that have these relationships with Jeremy Pruitt, imagine if they had already signed at Bama and Jeremy Pruitt had left. They'd be left, kind of holding their hands in the same direction. So it's unfortunate. And it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of this recruiting process with the early signing period. And now these coaches are off to different destinations. So it stinks. It's just part of the game. That's why anytime you get to talk to recruits, it's always about signing on to the university as opposed to the coaching staff. It's just the nature of the game.
Sometimes that's probably a little easier said than done. So that's the news that Georgia deals with now, the news we planned on talking about here today on SEC Country Live with our First and 10. Item number 1 on our list, it was, as we said a moment ago, a big weekend for Alabama. The national championship victory parade there in Tuscaloosa. A lot of fans on hand to celebrate with that. Nick Saban taking a moment to speak to the crowd in attendance, and well, he was feeling good about his memories of the championship and the message to his Alabama players about what it all means. Here's a little bit from Alabama coach Nick Saban.
I don't think anybody's ever going to forget I know I'll never forget the feeling that I had when Tua takes a sack, and 1 minute later, the feeling that I had when we threw the touchdown pass. And for the seniors that are here on this team, and the guys that will be leaving the team, my message after the game to them was, use the lessons that you learned in this season to help you be more successful in life. They will serve you well because the things that you did were extremely special. And to the players that are coming back, get ready for the challenges of the future and let everybody know that we're not finished. Thank you very much, and roll tide. Thank you.
So that's Nick Saban speaking to the crowd there, and obviously he was in a good mood. He wasn't the only one associated with this victory parade weekend for Alabama in a good mood. Greg Byrne, the Alabama athletic director, was also feeling good about Coach Saban as well. Saw this tweet, thought it was pretty interesting. It's actually our buddy Mark Burnett who tweets it out. Here's the quote from Byrne. "We don't have the best college football coach in the country. We've got the best coach in the country, not just, it means in all sports, basically, not just the best college football coach. We've got the best coach in the country, period, regardless of sport there," which is kind of an interesting thing to say on this weekend, given the fact that New England Patriots coach Bill Belichick just put the Patriots in the Super Bowl again after an AFC Championship win against Jacksonville on Sunday. So when you look at these two guys, friends, Belichick a mentor to Saban, is Saban a better coach than Bill Belichick in their respective sports?
It's tough to make that comparison. You know, I've seen both sides of this. I've seen how hard it is to prepare a team in the NFL and to get guys to play well, you know, week in and week out. I think that obviously Nick Saban has done a ton of things collegiately that you point to and say, you know, this is incredible. We've never seen anything like this. I lean towards Nick Saban just, you know, for simply the fact that I was under his tutelage and I saw it firsthand and I was able to see the things that Nick Saban does year in and year out. And I think the knock on Bill Belichick from this angle is always going to be, what is Bill Belichick without Tom Brady? And I know a ton of people in the comments section are going to point to, you know, Nick Saban couldn't hack it in the NFL. Neither could Bill Belichick after 2 years. I mean, his record was terrible with the first 2 years in the Cleveland Browns. It wasn't until 5 years later that he really gets going under Tom Brady. So I think they're extremely evenly matched. I think they're two of the best that have ever done it at each profession. I don't blame Greg Byrne, though, for getting in front of the crowd and actually giving the nod to Nick Saban. I think I would, too.
Shannon Burgess says, I don't think it really is a comparison. He says the same thing you said, that Nick wasn't able to do it in the NFL, that college football and the and the NFL are two very different leagues, very different brands of football. That's true. But as I think we've talked about in the show before, go back and sort of relitigate the history here. When Saban was the Miami Dolphins, it's not like he was 2-14. They were 8-8 in 2 seasons. The decision was made to bring in Dante Culpepper at quarterback instead of Drew Brees. Drew Brees, who would win a Super Bowl with the Saints. If Brees and Saban are paired up, who's to say how that turns out differently? But 2 8-8 seasons is not the definition of failure for Saban. He didn't get fired from the Dolphins. He left on his own to go to Alabama. So I do think it's an important thing to mention in this conversation that Saban was not a failure in the NFL. If anything, the grade would be incomplete, but certainly not an F.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, I think you first look at the first 2 years of Bill Belichick, 13-19. The first 5 years of Bill Belichick as a head coach in the NFL, 41-55 before he got Tom Brady on the field. So you're talking about 14 games under 500 in 5 years as a coach. So don't point to Nick Saban's record in 2 years as an NFL coach and say he was a failure. I agree with you. I need more of a track record. If Nick Saban ever decided to move in that direction, I think that he would have a lot of success. But I think when you look at what Nick Saban does, where he's rotating players every 3 or 4 years. He's getting a completely different team on the field every 4 years. That's why he gets the nod. And obviously, it's not shocking that I picked Nick Saban. But I think given the track record with different guys in an organization is what makes it so, impressive.
David Susano also referencing those Miami years for Nick Saban. Chris Carlson says, there's no shame in understanding where you fit best. Saban knows he's the best in college. I don't think it's fair comparison, but they're at least in the same conversation. Here's the one thing, though, that I'll say in the reason why if I had to pick between Belichick and Saban, two guys have been great, I'm going to go Saban over Belichick. It's actually more the LSU years than the Alabama years because what we've seen from Saban in Alabama is very similar to what Bill Belichick's built at New England. Right. But there is no second Super Bowl championship for another franchise for Belichick. He did get the Jets to the AFC title game, had some meager level of success in Cleveland, But in terms of Super Bowl winning success, that's really only been at New England. As I said, a conference title game, nothing else as a head coach in another spot. Whereas for Nick Saban, he won a national championship in 2 different places and created national championship teams there very, very quickly. In the case of both LSU and Alabama, neither one of those programs had been national championship teams in a long time before he got there. For the Alabama years, you have to go back to the 90s and Gene Stallings. For LSU, my gosh, how far back in the past you have to go back to find national championship success for LSU. So what Saban has in his sport, college football, that Bill Belichick does not have in his, is a championship at a second place. And I don't care, and by second place I mean additional spot. And I don't care what sport you're talking about. Multiple championships for multiple organizations. Nothing validates you as a coach more so than that.
Yeah, that is definitely incredible. And listen, it's not like I want to act like I'm taking a number 2 on Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is incredible. I mean, seeing it up close with your own eyes. I did 2-a-day practices against the Patriots when I was in the NFL. I've played against guys like that. The decisions he makes on hand at practice. I mean, this guy's watching 2-on-2 drills of the offensive line, and he's going to watch Tom Brady throw to Randy Moss, and then he's going different direction. He is incredible with NFL players, with the NFL style of players. The command and presence he has on that team is incredible. But I think Nick Saban, with his presence with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, is even a little bit better than Bill's.
Justin DeMarco says Belichick's the GOAT. He has the GOAT throwing the ball for him, meaning Tom Brady. Saban has the challenge of recruiting greatness every single year. I do think for a guy like Saban, recruiting is actually an advantage for him because he's going to approach it with such an insatiable appetite. But in terms of the comparison between the two, when you have been able to lean on Tom Brady for as long as Belichick's been able to lean on him, that is a little easier than what Nick Saban's been asked to do.
It definitely is, and I'm on. I'm in the team of people that think that after Tom Brady's gone, Bill Belichick will still continue to be successful. I mean, look how many quarterbacks he's gotten paid with other organizations. Yeah. You're talking about Matt Castle. Right. You're talking about obviously Jimmy Garoppolo. You're talking about a ton of different people that have actually gotten paid as backup quarterbacks for New England. So he's going to be successful, but it's still therein lies the fact that he hasn't been successful with anybody other than Tom Brady yet, and he hasn't yet to win a Super Bowl with anybody other than Tom Brady. So I think it goes hand in hand. I think Tom Brady is good because of Belichick, and Belichick the opposite. But Nick Saban has had to do it with a ton of different more people in the organization.
Item number 2 here in SEC Country Live. Thought Chauncey Gardiner from Florida had a pretty interesting tweet over the weekend, giving some life to an idea that Florida fans hope really take hold here in the brand new Dan Mullen administration there as a Florida coach. Here's the tweet from Gardner talking about the attitude that he's noticed around the Florida program. He says the team vibe is completely different. # change feels great. Gators, I guess, keeping it 100. Is that what we're saying there? Is that how you say that? Or is it 100?
I think it's keep it 100.
You're supposed to take the R off of it. Whatever it is, that's what Chauncey Gardner says there. And you're not in the Florida room, so you're not in the facility every day. So it may be unfair to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you see a different vibe around Florida since Dan Mullen's been the coach?
Listen, I saw the tweets before and after that he tweeted this about there being a different vibe. His reaction was, first of all, he tweeted that Hell Week is over, finally made it through Hell Week. He also said got some new J's, so I'm assuming that's the new Jordan Brand logo down there on some of the Florida stuff. He also said that he hit every step in that stadium, literally hit every step in the stadium that day. So that points to me that's Nick Savage. That's that's the new strength and conditioning coach at Florida who is making these changes under Dan Mullen. This is the reason why I always point to Scott Cochran in Alabama is such a big deal. When you're in the end of January, early February, these coaches are out recruiting. This team is interacting with the strength coach. He is the one turning around and making this progress at the school right now, and I 100% believe it. If any of the rumors are true about what strength and conditioning was under Jim McElwain, then a step in the right direction or even labeling something as Hell Week, to me, points to a completely different direction for the Florida program. I think it's awesome. They're kind of gaining some steam. You've seen Justin Watkins committed there, the 4-star wide receiver this past weekend. It looks like things are going well on the recruiting trail, and obviously that team is getting whipped back into shape after being out of shape for a couple of years now.
Yeah, so I have to admit what Michael Clyburn says in the comment section makes a lot of sense for me. Clyburn, who's a Mississippi State fan, says Dan Mullen at Florida is just Mississippi State coaching staff 2.0. I mean, I have to admit there's a degree to which that feels true to me. And I know people say, well, I'm a Georgia guy, so therefore I'm going to have the ulterior motive against Florida. And that's fine if you want to say that. That's fine. That's why Mike is here to kind of counterbalance that, I guess, some of that a little bit.
I try.
But is Dan Mullen striking fear in the hearts of anybody on the recruiting trail? Though the wide receiver pickup this weekend was a good one. Todd Grantham was defensive coordinator. We've really seen what that's looked like for a couple different stops now. I mean, I feel like that what Chauncey Gardiner seeing on the inside may be true. It may be the case this Florida team is galvanizing itself here a little bit. They may rally around Emory Jones, who may end up being the next freshman sensation quarterback in the SEC, the way there were a few in 2017 and a couple before that in 2016. That may indeed happen here, but as far as finding like tangible evidence on the recruiting trail or some sort of big-time hire where the rest of the SEC is sort of kind of clenching its teeth and anxiety about what this guy's going to bring to the table. It seems like Florida's missing that big headline that proves what Chauncey Gardner's saying.
Yeah, that's possible, and that's why we're sitting here on January 21st or whatever today's date is. I can't even keep up. 22nd, whatever it is on this Monday. It seems like
I literally don't know the day.
It seems like we've been out of pocket for so long with snow days and everything going on in Atlanta, but I think it's a slow build. I don't think we can point to it right now and say, Florida is tangibly better right now with Emory Jones leading this offense. We haven't seen Emory Jones. We haven't really seen how the signing class is going to pan out. We don't know exactly what this defense and the offense are going to look like next year under Dan Mullen. But what we've had, in my opinion, is a lack of bad news under Florida right now. We had the news last offseason. Is there a cultural problem? Right. Then you have some arrests, and you have some suspensions, and there's questions about what Jim McElwain's got going on. Right now, Dan Mullen, it's a slow build. I think it's still angled up, I guess is what I'm saying. As long as it's not angled down, for me, Dan Mullen can start to get the ball.
I think that's a really good point. We found out so much news has sort of trickled out here after the fact when it comes to the Jim McElwain era at Florida, or what may more accurately be described as an error of the McElwain error there at Florida. And the fact that McElwain did not seem on the same page with his employers, maybe not on the same page with many Florida fans, at least Mullen's going to get that part of it right. Now, will he fully embrace the pressure that comes with being the Florida coach? We'll find that out when the games start being played. But in terms of being able to fit in with the sort of high-profile world that the SEC is, Mullen certainly seemed to be more comfortable doing that than McElwain was going to be.
Yeah, I got to point to Logan Westman, too, in the comment section. He brings up, if Dan Mullen can get a transfer, maybe a quarterback. All these rules coming out. We haven't really talked enough about some of the transfer rules that could be coming down the line. A lot of these coaches out there want transfers to be eligible immediately. I think that could be a huge deal for a guy like Dan Mullen at Florida. I think that could be a really, really big rule change for him in the near future.
I certainly will play that out and see how it goes here in the days ahead. For now, let's talk about item number 3 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10. So Auburn looking at a brand new athletic director, Alan Green, on the job. He was at the Auburn-Georgia basketball game over the weekend, kind of taking in that raucous environment as Auburn came storming back to get a second-half come-from-behind win against Georgia. And, of course, Auburn coach Gus Malzahn has liked what he's seen from Green so far. He met with the reporters over the weekend. Malzahn weighing in on what makes Green such an attractive candidate for the Auburn's athletic director position. Here is Malzahn.
Alan's the type that you can spend 10 minutes with him and just, he's got that personality, dynamic personality. He's got a great vision. He's got the effect. And you can get around him in a short period of time and you can figure that out.
Certainly what we've seen from Green thus far would speak to what Malzahn's saying there, that there is a good bit of energy here from this guy. This is a fast riser, most recently athletic director at Buffalo, ties to SEC programs in the past, but clearly a pretty high-energy guy here.
Yeah, listen, I saw a little bit of Paul Feinbaum clips the other day, and Paul Feinbaum said that introductory presser was about as good as it gets. It's one of the most impressive things he's seen. And I watched a little bit of Alan Green speak, too, and I thought that he addressed the Auburn job in the right way. His kind of answer to everything was, listen, I don't know yet, but I'm the type of guy that does my homework. I'm the type of guy that's going to dig deep into these things, and I'm the type of guy that's going to be at Auburn for a long time. And we together, as an Auburn fan base, will figure these things out. I think he said all the right words. He's not the guy that stepped up, and sounded like military personnel and was delivering this address. I think he stepped up there and embraced the role, embraced what had gone on at Auburn in the tenure before him, and embraced what needed to happen moving forward. I thought he had all the right answers.
Cliff Nelson says, how quickly does Green get fed up with the inconsistencies of Malzahn and fire him? And as far as what he's going to be dealing with at Auburn, I think issues with the football coach are far more important to me than scandal with the softball program or firing the baseball coach or the NCAA basketball stuff. I've said before, I think an athletic director's job is to make a football coach happy. And if there's still time to take care of the other sports after you've made the football coach happy, then by all means go out and be good in the other sports. But your job first and foremost is to make the football coach happy. And that also means keeping the boosters happy or paying that football coach a salary. And I don't believe that the Malzahn situation is necessarily settled as of yet. He wins the Iron Bowl, he gets the big extension, but you and I would both say here that the fan response, the booster response to Malzahn is still fairly tepid here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be fairly easy to see Auburn fans, Auburn boosters turn on Malzahn if the start of the 2018 season does not go the way that Auburn wants it to go.
Here we already heard Malzahn a week ago talk about how the SEC network is costing people jobs, and these people are kind of out. And listen, I think that Malzahn's performance this year, in my mind, bought him 2 more years of service as the coach at Auburn. I think that no matter what happens this coming season, Malzahn keeps his job. I don't think there's any question about that. He just got the big extension. Obviously, everything comes down about Arkansas. Are you going to move on? Are you going to get fired? He wins the 2 big games against the number ones. I think that buys him another year. I think that at least gets you into 2019 as a head coach. But I'm with you. It still feels relatively lukewarm from a lot of the Auburn fans we've talked to, and I am curious to see what Alan Green has in mind for the long-term success of the football program. I think that he kind of takes a hands-off approach in year 1, and I think if they struggle in year 2 under Alan Green, he looks at Malzahn and says, at some point you have to produce a championship.
Well, Malzahn's got his own wish list here as well in terms of what he wants from his brand new AD. One of the things that Green joked about in his introductory press conferences that Gus Malzahn was already hitting him up for some facilities. He wants a football-only facility, much the way that Clemson has, and some things like that. Now, Green was joking in his press conference when he said that, but when Malzahn met with the reporters, they asked him about it nonetheless. Here's Malzahn talking about that.
Hey, we'll sit down and we'll talk about, everything as far as football is concerned, all that, and, in the due time, we'll talk about that. I know that was a joke that we kind of brought up as we were kind of getting to know each other.
But it is an issue that is on your list and probably on his too.
Yeah, I'm sure. In due time, we'll sit down and we'll talk about the whole football situation as far as facilities and everything that goes with that.
It's going to be the interesting thing for a brand new athletic director in an SEC school like Auburn to deal with is the fact that those budgets, running up those big projects, there's always something to be done in Auburn. Build the big scoreboard, enhance Jordan-Hare Stadium, and Malzahn's ready for more, and just like every other SEC coach is going to be.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, kind of his way of wording that was like, we talked about it a little bit in passing as we're getting to know each other. To me, in my mind, that plays out where Gus Malzahn's shaking his hands and being like, listen, I'm going to be up your butt about new facilities here over the next few months. And I got to admit that Gus Malzahn probably has a decent gripe in that direction. Being on campus this past weekend in Tuscaloosa, and I know that the same things are going on in places like Florida, places like Georgia. There's construction cranes everywhere. Every time you go back to Tuscaloosa and see what's going on in Alabama, there's fields being dug up. They're moving things around. They're making some new facility or chow hall or dorm going on. And so I think Gus Malzahn has a right.
Did you call it a chow hall?
Chow hall, yeah, a little chow hall.
I didn't realize we were doing a Western.
I don't know.
This is an episode of Bonanza.
Trainer's table, I guess they call it. Now, we used to call it a chow hall every now and then.
Did you really?
Yeah, I mean, some of us did. I wouldn't say that's like a team-wide verbiage, but chow hall. Everybody knows what chow hall is.
People know. I'm just pointing out the colloquial language here.
I just think that after seeing that and understanding that every year something's getting built at places like Georgia, places like Alabama, Gus Malzahn at some point he's going to say, hey, listen, this 7.5 is really good, but we need a little extra edge.
Well, a couple comments along those lines. Jason Waldrop says, I bet Gus Malzahn's laughing out loud about the contract that he did sign. It certainly does seem to give him a good bit of a job security, except for the point that Teresa Smith makes. That contract itself hasn't actually been signed. She asked, I think with the coaching changes, a different question from her, but she mentioned, has that contract been signed? There's some reporting out there that it has not been, but I'm no lawyer. A lot of these contracts never seem to get signed, but they seem to still be binding nonetheless. So I personally wouldn't read a whole lot into the fact that the contract hasn't been signed.
The thing to me, too, is a signature on a contract like this almost never means anything. When does this contract, either way, good or bad, ever pan out? It's like, if the guy does well next year, if the guy does well next year, guess what? He's going to need an extension and a raise. And if he doesn't do well, guess what? He's going to be on the hot seat and might lose his job. The contract never plays itself out anyway.
All right, let me move on to item number 4 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10. So this video's been out there for a couple days. Cole Swindell is a popular country music artist, and at a recent concert, a couple Georgia players, quarterback Jake Fromm, tight end Isaac Nada, got up there on the stage, and obviously they were well received by the crowd filled with many Georgia fans. And Nada, the tight end, took it to himself to do what Georgia fans like to call calling the dogs. Listen to the call and response here from Nada. Look at Fromm having a good time, and everybody feeling good about the SEC champs. Here is Nada and Fromm at the Cole Swindell concert.
All right, first of all, we just want to thank all y'all for supporting us this year. We came this close, but I promise you, we'll be back. And because y'all, we want to call the dogs one time.
it's red and black. Ain't nothing funner in
Yeah, so anyway, they go on to do this. Nada and Fromm. First of all, you're a big-time football player. Have you ever been on the stage before?
Yeah, I've been on stage at a couple concerts before, some benefit concerts, stuff like that. Yeah, and I got a couple of roll tides and stuff like that. This right here, I mean, like he's digging into the hearts of the fans. I mean, he's trying to make his presence known. It's a little bit. Is it awkward? I don't know. Like I feel like I got a little flustered watching that, like secondhand cringe-worthy stuff.
No, I don't think so. I think the fans are receiving that well. But here's my question for you though. Here's the point. When I first saw this video, speaking of a person who follows Georgia closely, Isaac Nada was a former 5-star tight end coming out of high school, and I think up to this point in time, the career has been through 2 years. The career has been good. But maybe not like 5-star worthy. Honestly, for Alabama fans who are watching us, Nada's probably pretty similar to O.J. Howard, who much the same way, probably did not live up to that 5-star billing necessarily up until like the national championship game, really of his junior year probably. Also played pretty well in the game Alabama lost last year to Clemson. But Howard and Nada are probably a little bit similar. Nada was also really good friends with Jacob Eason, who's now heading probably back out west. We don't know where he's going yet, but he's not in Georgia. So now Nada maybe hanging out with Fromm a little bit here. Is this a good thing? I mean, because everybody, from all intents and purposes, other than hanging out at the Cole Swindell concert, Fromm's in the weight room, Fromm's in the film room, Fromm's going to bed early, Fromm's all about football. I feel like that's probably a good thing to sort of rub off on Isaac Nada a little bit. I mean, how does that work? You think so?
I don't know. I don't think you want Jake Fromm to change any. I think you're pretty happy with what Jake Fromm was.
No, I don't want Fromm to change. I want Fromm to change Nada.
Yeah, I know what it could happen the other way. Like, does that not scare you a little bit that it could go the other direction? I think that.
I don't know how much they are hanging out, but the fact they're side by side here, I think if you're a Georgia fan, you don't take that as a bad sign.
No, I don't think you can. I think anytime you can get players together to hang out with each other, first of all, that's a good thing for leadership.
Not all of them.
Yeah, not all of them.
I don't want all my players hanging out together. I want some of them hanging out.
There is a small piece to me that wonders if this could go badly instead of really well. But I think it's a good sign. I've seen this happen before in front of my own eyes, where quarterbacks hang out with receivers, hang out with tight ends, and it's almost always a very good thing.
So Fromm's thing is one of the things that helped him have such a good freshman year is he's a hunter, right? So when you're waking up early going hunting, you don't have time to stay out late all Friday night because you can't be burning the candle and staying out at downtown Athens at 4 a.m. and being in a duck blind 5 a.m. It just doesn't work that way, right?
No, it definitely doesn't. And you know what's crazy too? Hunters like that, that's all they care about. It's like, you know what? My God, hunting is first and foremost when I wake up in the morning. So then I'll get to workouts and everything afterwards. But you're right, it does get you out of bed, especially as an 18, 19-year-old kid. I think the ceiling is incredibly high for Jake Fromm. I don't know if this tips the scale in any direction one way or another.
Trey Dukes is a Georgia fan, but maybe not a fan of country music. He says, no, BA, that was embarrassing. So the non-country music fans maybe don't like saying
I cringed. I don't know. For some reason, it just felt a little cringy to me.
But that's a very popular Georgia cheer. That's the thing you got to understand.
Oh, no.
Every Georgia fan would know what that cheer is.
I understand. I just don't think I guess there's just not any way. I couldn't get up in front of a crowd like that and make something like that sound good. I just I close my eyes and I'm like, okay, let's move on to the next thing.
See, I feel like that Nada's got that Hollywood vibe going a little bit, though, right? He's got the bleach blonde hair.
He had some pretty tight pants on in that video.
I think that's the way
Jake Fromm's rubbing off on him. I don't know. Maybe he needs to loosen up. You can see everything.
I think that's the way that Nada's trying to roll there a little bit. I think he's trying to be like sort of a Hollywood type guy.
I don't know. He almost didn't get him over his boots right there. Look at his boots on the side.
Like Fromm definitely looks Cole Swindell, right?
Boots down there. Those things are painted on down there.
He's got like the tailored shirt. Like they're just very different guys.
Yeah,
I mean, Fromm, could have cut the grass in those clothes.
Yeah.
Whereas Nada, I mean, clearly that's a more tailored look for Nada there, right?
I agree. Yeah, he's definitely going for a little more Hollywood look to him.
Yeah, that's, Greg Steele, the Florida fan, says that was a fail. Maybe so. We'll move on to item number 5 here on our SEC Country Live, 1st and 10. So I thought that Athlon Sports, Steve Lafson, the writer here, had kind of an interesting look ahead to the 2018 season, and what he was looking for were some of those breakout stars potentially in college football. And as you might expect, a lot of these SEC names do show up on this list for him. And I found a theme with a few of the names that Lafson mentioned in terms of his potential breakout stars from college football in general, but in particular the ones that come from the SEC. A few of these guys are in positions to really fill in and take the place of a pretty big-time departed star, to really fill the shoes of a pretty big-time departed player. Let me give you a couple examples here. Ty Chandler, the running back from Tennessee, who I think is a pretty good-looking prospect.
Yeah.
But he's got big shoes to fill in 2018.
Yes,
he's got to fill in for John Kelly, who at times, I mean, listen, Kelly, I don't know that he had quite the season that some Tennessee fans want him to have. Maybe even Tennessee itself wanted him to have. But boy, at times he really looked strong. Chandler, in filling in for that role, has got some big shoes to fill. The same thing for Clavon Chasen, who in a lot of ways at LSU will be the replacement for Arden Key. Now, Chasen had to take on some of that role during the season because Key wasn't always available for the Tigers. Javon Osborne, the receiver, kind of filling in for Christian Kirk and taking the place of Christian Kirk there at Texas A&M. You've got these potential breakout stars, and Steve Lassen over at Athlon Sports kind of lays them all out. But in this case, these young guys are also going to have to fill in for guys and take the place of guys who put up big numbers in that role for the previous year for these SEC teams. Is there one from this trio that you think is maybe more equipped to be able to do that?
Well, I definitely like what Ty Chandler is, but I think Jamon Osborne, first of all, Jamon Osborne, when you look at it, he's the kind of guy that already had decently big numbers. I mean, he had like 50 catches this past year, I think 600 yards, something crazy like that in that offense at Texas A&M. So he's a guy who's understandably going to step into that role. If I have to look at Clavon Chasen, I think that I'm going to veer away from him just for the simple fact that I actually thought his numbers would be better last year. I was really high on him going into the year. He had flashed a ton, before the season. Ed Orgeron talked about him multiple times, and we just didn't get, in my opinion, the production I thought I would out of Clavon Chasen. I thought he really was going to be a rookie to watch, a freshman that was going to burst on the scene last year. I don't know if the product on the field actually ended up being what I thought it would be. So I do fall back to a guy like Ty Chandler. And obviously there's some other SEC names on this list, but Ty Chandler, when you talk about the ability and the mentality I think that Tennessee's going to have under Jeremy Pruitt, I think he's going to fit in with that very well. I think he becomes explosive.
For me, it's Clavon Chasen simply because of these three units. Tennessee offense that Ty Chandler plays on, Texas A&M offense Jamon Osborne plays on, or Chasen's LSU defense. The unit I feel the best about for 2018 is the LSU defense. Now, I have no idea what to expect from the LSU offense. I don't know that anyone does. But in terms of the LSU defense, I still think it's going to be pretty good. I think there's enough talent around Chasen to still expect something there. I expect a lot. I expect a lot from him, and expect a good season there.
Right, and he kind of falls back into that same mentality of kind of having the ability to rush the passer and the ability to make things really work for Dave Aranda's defense. I think it's kind of built off pass rushers, guys that are long, guys that can speed the edge, guys that can rush to power and get to the quarterback. So he does fit in well with Dave Aranda's defense, but I just think I expected more things to come from him this past season, and we just didn't see him. So I look at a guy like Osborne and understand that, hey, you know what? This is the guy we want, and I think that filling in for Christian Kirk and becoming a big role in this offense is going to be a big deal under Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, so we'll look to see how that goes. And, listen, it's a great piece at Athlon Sports. You can check out more of these guys. DeAndre Swift shows up on this list. Some people in the comment section were also suggesting some other names that could be there. Kenneth Scott mentioned C.C. Jefferson. Jefferson is on this list, one of those guys that chooses to stay at Florida. That's a big name. Someone mentioned Tyree Cleveland a moment ago. I would argue that Cleveland may already be kind of a known commodity in the SEC. Yeah. I don't know that
Same
Cleveland,
for Jefferson, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that Cleveland had the quarterback, although Jefferson does show up on the list. I don't know that Cleveland had the quarterback to deliver him the football this season the way that he always needed. Yeah. But I think that when healthy, when ready to go, Tyree Cleveland is for the most part a known commodity among SEC teams.
Yeah, I think so too. And the reason I point to C.C. Jefferson, and obviously, he's going to make his own splash, but I look at a guy who could be a lot more explosive in the hips this next year, and we already mentioned Nick Savage at the top of the show. I think that given a year under a different, kind of strength and conditioning coach, I think all those guys in the interior from Florida are really going to take a step up. Some of the guys that we expected to be really special last year, Jawan Taylor, Martez Ivy, some of those guys, I think they play a lot better this next season.
By the way, Cliff Nelson in the comment section, who is an LSU fan, says for Alabama, Najee Harris is going to be one of these guys. I think that Harris is the best running back in the Alabama roster, with all due respect to a very deep crop of guys. I know Damian Harris is coming back, but I think that Najee Harris is the best running back on that roster, most dynamic of those players. When you've got an LSU fan in the comment section basically talking about Najee being one of the breakout guys, I just think that I think you have to acknowledge that Harris is one of the top players in the league, even if he's not even technically the starter for Alabama.
Yeah, no, I agree. And listen, obviously there's Tua is on this list, and I got to tell you, though, the one guy that really sticks out to me as maybe being the best one that was on this list was DeAndre Swift. I mean, when you talk about DeAndre Swift, explosive from the running back position. I think he already had, 650 yards rushing this last year on not a ton of carries. And so he showed the ability to be special. I really think if Kirby Smart keeps that same mentality under Jim Chaney about running the football, Swift could hit a ton of yardage next year.
We'll see how that goes. Item number 6 here in SEC Country Live. So, I don't know if this is bad, if it just looks bad, if this is controversial but doesn't need to be. Kind of an interesting point here. Patrick Surtain Jr., one of the top cornerbacks in all of high school football recruiting, takes a visit to Alabama over the weekend. This is one of the elite players. Surtain's been kind of in the mix for LSU. Alabama kind of coming in strong on him as of late. And one of the things that Alabama may have done here, being interested more than just Surtain Jr., maybe interested in Patrick Surtain Sr. as well. A website that covers Alabama, Bama Insider, gives us this quote from Patrick Surtain Sr. about Surtain interviewing for the Alabama defensive back coaching position that became available after Derek Ansley went to the NFL and the Oakland Raiders. What Surtain Sr. says is, I met with all the people in the office. Met with Coach Saban and his staff. It was actually a great experience for him to even consider me. To be a coach at Alabama would be a tremendous honor. Eventually it may happen, but I guess it wasn't the right time. He also, in those quotes to Bama Insider, made it clear that the recruitment for Surtain Jr. would be separate from whatever coaching position that he were to get. That's going to strain the imagination for some. It's worth pointing out, the best I can tell, Surtain Sr. is not a coach anywhere. A little bit different than, say, a guy like KJ Henry's dad, who was or is a coach at Charlotte, was also connected to some coaching rumors as well. So Surtain Sr. calls this a job interview. Is it wrong for Alabama to interview the dad of a player that it's recruiting for a coaching position?
I don't think it's wrong just from the outside looking in. I do think that you have to be wary for Nick Saban. And when I looked at it, I kind of cringed. When I look at the headline, and it was not because of the fact that maybe you're trying to push a recruit in that direction. For me, it was, if you're going to invite this guy in and give him an interview, there is a chance this goes south. There is a chance that Patrick Surtain Jr. looks at it and goes, why didn't my dad get this coaching job?
Yeah.
Why didn't he land on campus? Why isn't he part of what Nick Saban's trying to do? I think that those words right there calm me down a little bit. But I felt the same way about the situation at South Carolina, where if you're going to hire one of these guys, they better be a really good coach, because you're taking up an entire spot for one kid.
That's right, and that's why Alabama would never do it. And we don't have Alabama's side of the story on this, and nor will we ever have their side of the story on this. My guess is Alabama's side of the story is very different than Surtain Sr.'s. Steve Weaver in the comment section says this happens in basketball all the time. And, in the case of, like, say, Michael Porter Jr.'s dad being hired by Missouri, that's the elite recruit. He hasn't played because of an injury, but his dad got hired by Missouri. My understanding, though, is Porter's dad was a coach.
Oh, yeah.
Before he got hired at Missouri, whereas Surtain's dad was a great player, very good player, but not actually a coach. There's a rule in place for football. Now, I don't know if this rule is in place for basketball or not. I just don't follow basketball recruiting closely enough to know this. Whereas, if you hire a recruit's coach, there's now some sort of restrictions and penalties associated with that, with football now. So, it used to be that, hey, you want to get a player to come, just hire his high school coach and the player comes right along with him. There's actually some restrictions in place now that sort of prevent that from happening.
Yeah, there definitely is, too. And I think that, there was a column earlier this year on SEC Country, or a couple of months ago, about how, Jeremy Pruitt wouldn't have been in the role that he's at if he had not, if the rules were in place like they are now. When Jeremy Pruitt was hired, things would not have turned out the same. And I think that goes along with a bunch of the other coaches that you see that are at the smaller levels in terms of FCC coaches. So I think it definitely is something to pay attention to. Obviously, the rules for dads are different. But I think it is. I think it stinks that a guy like Jeremy Pruitt would not have got the job offer he did if the rules were the same as they are now.
So Ben Fuller says that Surtain is the coach in American heritage. So that's not what his Wikipedia page said, but maybe he is involved in coaching. But still, that's a high school level. That's not the coaching level. And ultimately, the reason why I don't think there's a lot of rules that need to be in place that restrict something like this is because ultimately, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, LSU, the schools that we cover here on SEC Country Live, they're not going to waste one of their 10 coaching positions on the guy that can enhance the program from a recruiting standpoint. So if you're going to bring in, like, the Jeremy Pruitts, the Hugh Freezes, the Gus Malzahns in the past, who were high school coaches, if you're going to bring them in and make them coaches, you're not going to do that unless you think they're contributing coaches have the opportunity to do that.
And that was my initial thought, and I think you have to be just careful. And I know that obviously, listen, you just trust Nick Saban that he's going to be careful in situations like this. I think the conversations obviously that led to this interview, I think he felt comfortable enough with where Patrick Surtain Sr. actually felt about this job, because you see the comments coming off. He's like, maybe one day it'll work out, and I'm thankful that I even got interviewed. That could have gone bad. That could have gone bad, where you interview a guy's dad, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, he didn't, we didn't offer him the job, and then it's there's some resentment there. That's what scared me about it.
By the way, how about this? At American Heritage, Surtain, who does go there, his counterpart, the other cornerback on the other side, is Tyson Campbell, another 5-star. Like, two of the top cornerbacks in the country, part of the same defensive backfield, an amazing talent level there. Item number 7 here in SEC Country Live. So I want to be very careful here for a moment that I don't come across as like the biggest Scrooge in the world about this. So I just want you to hear me out on this.
You probably will, now that you said that way.
I see a potential problem in the works here. And this is true at one school. If it's true at one school, it's going to be true at them all eventually, where the power of social media has made it a lot easier to make requests of college players. And you're seeing some college players, in this case it's a couple Georgia players, but they're involved in some children's birthdays here. Let me show you first of all, and by the way, these kids are incredibly cute. The act on the part of the players incredibly nice. This is all like unbelievably, happy, unbelievably good stuff. But I can't help but wonder how like the next iteration of this goes wrong. Let me start off with Terry Godwin here, who made one young fan's day here by participating in a FaceTime phone call and an interview. I think we have some social media proof of this coming from Terry Godwin here, who spent some time with a young fan. So here's kind of a sideways video, but take a look at this.
Oh, man. He signed it. What do you tell Terry? Thank you. You like that, buddy?
Yay.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
Will.
So what you see there is the kid opens the present, the football's autographed by Terry Godwin, and then what looks to be the dad is holding up the phone with Godwin on FaceTime. Right. So it's not enough to get the autographed football. You got the FaceTime conversation going on at the same time. And another example of this comes from a young fan, once again on Facebook, who super cute kids, obviously big-time SEC fans, which we all love here in SEC Country Live, but they've got a request to make of Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm. Let's check out these kids on this.
What's up, boys? My name is Brantley. I'm about to be 5 years old, and I love Georgia football. That's why I'm having a Georgia football party. This is my sister.
Hey, I'm Brantley's sister, Lakin, and I'm about to be 7 years old. And we love Georgia football. Go Dogs! Sick 'em! Ruff, 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 ruff. And our favorite player is you, Jake Fromm. And we have just a little question. Will you come to my birthday party?
So the kid wants Fromm to come to his birthday party.
And see if you can come.
Now, Fromm tweets about this back, says he's not going to be available to come to the party, but he'd be happy to FaceTime with him during the party.
Right.
Which, listen, my son is 6. This kid reminds me so much of my son. My son's, as you might imagine, a big Georgia fan too. So, a lot of us can sort of relate to these kids. Hey, love Jake Fromm, you love Terry Godwin, you love, Tua Tagovailoa or whatever other player in the SEC you want. But are we opening up a can of worms here where now these SEC players have to FaceTime with every kid in the South for their birthday? I feel like there's a way this is going to go wrong, right?
No, there's all kinds of ways it can go wrong. This kind of started when I was in school. The whole social media revolution kind of came out. When I was a freshman in college, I remember signing up for Facebook, and it was just a college thing at the time. Then I think the first time I ever remember seeing this happen was when Tim Tebow got asked to prom. Tim Tebow got asked to prom when he was in high school, and everybody wanted. That was a new thing. I'm going to ask this guy to prom. I'm going to ask Taylor Swift to prom. I'm going to, and everybody, some of these people would show up to proms, and I kept thinking, what's the end game here? Like, does this guy not look bad because he doesn't show up for a prom? Right. Are you just like, hey, I just don't have time to go to a prom? I don't want to get a tux and all this stuff.
Or like before you know it, Tim Tebow's got like 10,000 prom.
Exactly.
It's like his whole Twitter mention is nothing but, hey, would you go to prom with me? And obviously social media makes all this so easy. And listen, I'm as entertained by these videos as anybody. And I love the idea that a Georgia wide receiver signing an autograph, doing the FaceTime. I like the idea that these kids are reaching out to Fromm, and Fromm's a good enough guy to reach back to it. We all love this about the SEC because there is this connection between player and fan, because these are all hometown guys for the most part. There's connection between player and fan that kind of doesn't really exist maybe in some other sports, especially when you think about professional sports. But man, it's like any of us who ever had kids know what you do for one, you got to do for everybody. All of a sudden now Jake Fromm's FaceTime schedule is 6 months long because he had to reach out to every kid about their birthday.
And not only that, too, I start thinking about rules, NCAA rules, violations for things like this. Hey, I I had an extra shirt in my locker and I gave it to this Georgia fan. Well, is that allowed? Are we, you're allowed to give things? Whether I got to be honest with you too, and this crossed my mind this past weekend when I was in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, I was working the parade. I had the microphone, had the camera, from SC Country, and Talia Tagovailoa walks in front of me, and I thought, man, I should go over there and talk to that guy. He's standing there right in front of me, 5 feet away, and I got scared. I was like, I'm going to violate some kind of rule. I'm going to pull like some kind of college game day thing with Herb Street and mess something up. I didn't want anything to do with it. This is all those small rules. I don't want anything to do with it. So there is a part of me that wonders if there is some kind of end game for things like that.
Yeah, listen, some of those rules can certainly be very complicated when it comes to that. Speaking of rules, by the way, some Kentucky fans felt jobbed by the rules, at least by the officials trying to enforce the rules. That's the subject of item number 8 here on SEC Country Live, our first and 10. We don't talk about a ton of basketball here on our program, but from the looks of things, Kentucky definitely was in the wrong end of a pretty miserable officiating call at the end of the game and a loss to Florida over the weekend. Someone on Twitter was able to capture the real critical moment here where it looks like Kentucky should have been going to the free throw line. Take a look here. I mean, that's just absolutely getting clobbered there in the lane. I mean, that's pretty clearly a foul, right?
Yeah, definitely is pretty clearly a foul too. Hey, I have a tough time with this because it is in slow-mo. And how many times has your team been on the bad end of that, like get called for a foul down the stretch? And I'm the type of guy that yells at the TV that's like, hey man, let them play. It's,
a couple weeks ago?
It's the last 20 seconds.
A couple weeks ago?
I look at it and go, man, let those guys play. Let the game be finished on the court. Let's not take this to the free throw line. But obviously, when you show the things like that in slow motion, it's a bad look.
I've got a point I want to make about this, but first let me hear John Calipari. He's asked about this in his post-game press conference. Was it a foul? Here was Calipari's response.
Did you think PJ got fouled on the second to last play?
Well, you would ask me that. I've been asked some dumb questions in my life. I don't mean to embarrass you, but everybody saw it.
So at the end he says, I don't mean to embarrass you, but everybody saw what it was. It's a foul. But here's my point. And I'm not a Kentucky basketball fan. I really don't care if they win or lose. I have no connection to Kentucky whatsoever, other than the fact they're in the SEC. And we talk about the SEC Country Live, when it's applicable. Kentucky, the best I can tell, is the only blue blood program in all of sports that doesn't get the benefit of the doubt about anything. Hear me on this for a minute. The Pats played the Jaguars yesterday. They got called for one penalty. It's like 9-1, penalty disparity. In college basketball alone, you had North Carolina basketball who had that NCAA, academic scandal. They get treated with total kid gloves.
Swept that right under the rug.
Total kid gloves on that. How many times, for those people who care about the NBA, have we seen superstars get away with calls over and over and over again? Yeah, in Kentucky, it's not just this foul at the end of this game.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who follows college basketball will tell you they get the hardest region in the NCAA tournament every single year. I mean, it is. You can pencil it in. It is a joke. Their region is harder than the other power teams' regions every single year. Kentucky's the only. They're huge revenue, huge fan base. It's big business. It's good to have Kentucky connected to big games. They get no benefits of the doubt whatsoever in a way that almost no other power program in any other professional sport, any other college sport, and in a way that almost no other team ever has to deal with.
And I'll go a step farther too. I think when you look at that call in particular, it's definitely blatant. I think when you watch the Patriots or watch some of the other teams involved, and you're right, some of the power programs, it's just that the ticky-tack calls don't go the way against the Patriots. It's like, man, that could have been called, but it didn't. When you look at that Kentucky call right there, it seems pretty blatant. It's a pretty big foul. It's not ticky-tack by any means, in my opinion. That's a foul. And so I think Kentucky fans do get a little upset when they look at it from different angles. Now, I do think Kentucky every now and then probably gets the benefit in a lot of different ways. But you're right. Overall, I don't see them ever really stepping out.
I honestly don't. I'm not trying to sort of be some sort of conspiracy theorist because I don't think this particular call in this particular game is affected by this. I think the NCAA is sort of out to get Kentucky. I don't think the I don't think the NCAA likes Kentucky because of the dominance that Kentucky shows from a recruiting standpoint. It's really Kentucky and Duke that get every single player, and obviously they seem to favor Duke a little bit more than Kentucky. But I think there is a bias that exists against Kentucky on the part of the NCAA. Yeah. Not necessarily for this call, but it's ironic that in other sports you don't see this team, the blue blood, the power team on the other end of it.
Yeah, and it was definitely, listen, if you talk to Kentucky fans, it was a tough weekend. They fall out of the top 25. Obviously the loss, Zion Williamson commits to elsewhere. And the Kentucky fans are left sitting there going, man, what exactly is happening right now? And so I don't think this is the basketball team a lot of people expected to take the fourth for Kentucky, but I think they are getting better.
All right, item number 9 here on SEC Country Live, our first and 10. So a new look for Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurds. Of course, we showed you earlier Tua Tagovailoa getting some love from the crowd when Alabama celebrated its national championship over the weekend. Jalen Hurts ready to get back to work and earn a spot back on the football field again. Apparently, he's going to do it with a little bit more streamlined, aerodynamic look here. The trademark dreadlocks that he's been famous for, they are now gone. On Twitter, instead, you see him showing off kind of freshly, is it coiffed? Is that the word? Freshly coiffed hair? What do you think about?
I've never heard that word. Coiffed?
I believe it's coiffed, right?
I've never heard that word. You might be right. I might just be out of
no, I think that's a word. What do you think about Hurts without the dreadlocks?
Looks a little aerodynamic, doesn't he? He actually looks like a completely different person. When I saw the video, I was like, who is that? And he's actually got a little bit of that blonde up top. He's got a little like Tua look to him almost. Tua's got the tight hair. He's got the blonde on top.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good look. I mean, he's obviously a handsome guy, and I think, listen, I guess I'm probably at times guilty of making things be related that are not, but he does lose his starting job, or at least he was taken out of the game. That's probably the better way to say that, against Georgia, the national championship game. Is that and this in any way related whatsoever? Is this an example of Hurts saying, hey, I'm going to get serious? Not that the dreadlocks are not serious, but sometimes when you need a change, you make a change to sort of kickstart the change that you think you need to make. Is there anything symbolic about Jalen Hurts cutting the dreadlocks?
There may be so. Maybe Jalen looks in the mirror and goes, all right, 2018, new year, new me. I'm going to go ahead and cut this thing off and get the ball rolling. I don't think it's directly related. I don't think he says, man, I needed a change so I can be better on the football field. But I do think there is a sense that, okay, we won a national title, and I don't have to keep Clemson as my background on my phone anymore. Yeah. I'm going to have to, really battle it out in the spring for my starting job. And maybe there is, room for maybe just getting older, but maybe there is room in his life for a big change. And obviously you start to see it unfold.
Steve Weaver's heard the word quaff before. So that's a real word.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I've never heard it.
Yeah, it sort of sounded like you're saying that I was wrong.
I wasn't trying to call you out. Listen, I've never. What does that mean, coiffed?
I think it means like when you get your hair done. Now I can't use it in the sentence anymore, but that's like a word associated with hair. Lindsay Weiss says, am I still mad about the loss? No, I've moved on from that. Listen, I'm all fine with that. No big deal for me on that point now. I'm more worried about what's going to happen between the Alabama quarterbacks and how Nick Saban's going to solve all that. Logan Westerman talking about that in the comment section says he, meaning Jalen Hurts, better pick up more than just a hairstyle from Tua Tagovailoa. And I think that, listen, I don't know how Hurts goes about his business January through September. I don't think any of us really know that, but I certainly don't know that because I'm not there in Tuscaloosa every single day. So I can't say what he's doing during this time of year, but clearly whatever Tua has done has prepared him to throw the football in a way that Hurts probably does need to copy.
Yeah, and listen, I think it's beneficial for both these guys to be around each other because I think that Jalen gives something to Tua that Tua doesn't have too. And so you're going to balance these guys out. And I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how it's going to play out for Nick Saban and Alabama either at the quarterback position. I think you go into the spring and give both these guys the opportunity. I just think that naturally Tua is such a more gifted passer than Jalen Hurts that Jalen's going to face an uphill battle come spring. I think that Tua just, out of the womb, I feel like he had a better arm and more accuracy than Jalen's got right now. So a lot of work left to be done on both sides.
Andrew Walker says it is coiffed, and I did use it correctly. So thank you, Andrew.
I learned something new today.
I'm sorry I worked with such a Neanderthal.
I learned something new today. Learned something. So can I say coiffed, or is it like a specific thing? Like if I go get my hair done, can I say I just got coiffed?
No, I don't think you say it that way. Okay. I think you say freshly coiffed. I think that's the way you say it.
Sure.
Stephen Early says I'm an old man for even talking that way. Maybe so. That may very well be true. I'll tell you who's not an old man. That's Mississippi State quarterback Nick Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald here celebrating a birthday, much younger than me, and celebrating his birthday in a very different fashion than I celebrate mine as well. As I said, that's the subject of item number 10. This picture's kind of also been out there for a couple days. I've been meaning to talk about it. We didn't get a chance to. And Fitzgerald here getting some love from Miss South Carolina. I apologize for not knowing her name, but I don't. But she is Miss South Carolina. That's her distinction. And she writes to Nick Fitzgerald, "Can it be your birthday every day? I love celebrating you." And that's kind of a nice message, Miss South Carolina here. It seems to be a good year for the Palmetto State. So she's kind of sending that love out there to Fitzgerald, and I guess this is what it comes when you're a quarterback. You have these kind of high-profile birthday messages.
That quarterback life is good, isn't it? I mean, how many times have
Susie Roberts, by the way, is her name.
Yeah, how many times have we seen? I feel like this comes up like every couple of years. I mean, obviously AJ McCarron was a big deal back when he dated like Miss Alabama, Catherine Webb, and in college. And you just see it continue to roll on him. Like Will Greer was this way when he was at Florida. His girlfriend's like a Tampa Bay cheerleader.
Yeah.
So. It definitely seems to be life is good.
And by the way, our buddy Han on the other side of the glass, we sort of lean on her for like our sort of relationship IQ. We don't. It is his girlfriend. Well, you told me before the show it wasn't. Okay, so Hannah lets us know that is his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I was going to go down the distraction road, but if they're in a relationship, then that's no distraction.
No distraction.
You're allowed to have a girlfriend.
Yeah. And from everything
Hannah,
we saw before show, we're trying to find something. It's it's so weird to do that. Hey, let me dive into somebody's tweets and see their pictures from last year. But it seems like they've been together for a long time.
Now, if you live in South Carolina, are you betrayed by Miss South Carolina dating a Mississippi State quarterback?
Man,
does Jake Bentley not have a girlfriend?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think you feel that way. I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel like I'd be mad if Tua Tagovailoa was dating Miss South Carolina or something like that, vice versa. So it is what it is, man. Good for him.
Well, listen, here on SEC Country Live, we always close out the show the same way each and every day. We're always on the lookout for champions of life. Butch Jones is not at Tennessee anymore, but we're still looking for champions of life. And today, this video is going to come at you fast. So I got to set this up because it's really, really funny. One of the things that we saw over the course of the weekend were Philadelphia Eagles fans in full display with the NFC Championship in their building. They beat the Minnesota Vikings, and the passion for SEC football is very different than it is for pro football up north. We obviously go back and forth with each other. Fans have, there's great rivalries. For the most part, I think in the SEC it stays good-natured.
Yeah.
I think it's gentlemanly. I think for the most part it's all good. NFL, maybe not always the case. Sometimes Eagles fans make a drunken spectacle of themselves, including this Eagles fan trying to catch up with a SEPTA train there in Philadelphia. And take a look. Boom! Runs right into the pole.
First of all, what did this guy think he was going to do? I mean, was he just like going to catch up and ride on the side of this thing?
I love the idea of the fans videoing their friend here, because the moment you see the guy go down, you know that you've truly struck gold at that point in time. I mean, you know that you've actually hit the jackpot here.
What I just love is the form for the big fella out there. I mean, look how far away his arms are from his body. I mean, he is like, he's getting the big man run going.
Well, listen, Tyler Mann says ouch in the comment section. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly about the way that would feel. Will Ward says, what a buffoon trying to catch a train. Because here's the thing. If you've ever ridden one of these like big city subways, they all say the same thing. Once the doors close, they are not reopening. Yeah. And once the train starts rolling down the track, it's certainly not going to stop.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, what was his plan? Was he going to get there and like jump on the side of this thing and try to ride to the next destination?
Exactly. What is he going to like Marty McFly in Back to the Future? But you played in a lot of these NFL stadiums. You'd agree with me on this, right? Or maybe you don't. Like, SEC fans at their drunkest, SEC fans at their most obnoxious, they're a lot more tolerable than some of these big city NFL fans.
There's no doubt about it. Listen, I played in Philly one time, and obviously Arthur Blank was the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. He had to turn around and talk to a Philly fan in the first row because the Philly fan was basically cursing out his son. Like, he was cursing out like Arthur Blank's little like 10-year-old son, and Arthur was like, hey, let's chill out for a second. And I don't think the Philly fan had anything good to say to Arthur either. He's like, I don't care who you are, man, get out of my face. I bought this ticket.
So we basically have no rooting interest left in the Super Bowl. Patriots Philadelphia couldn't get less Southern than that. But there are a lot of SEC guys in the mix, and as somebody said in the comment section, a lot of LSU players involved in some of this as well. And I thought that Fournette had a great game for the Jaguars. I sort of wish they would have won. Anyway, that's the NFL. We talk SEC here. And if you'd love to hear more of our show, if you missed a portion today, we'll have the podcast up for you. It'll be up on iTunes and SoundCloud as soon as the show is done today. Also, we'd be certainly appreciative if you'd share the show with your friends on Facebook. Let them know we're talking about the SEC each and every day here on SEC Country Live. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for another episode of SEC Country Live. We'll see you then. Hope you have a great day.